Hi, in this video we're going to look at the topic of changing the subject. That's basically an algebraic way of talking about moving things around. This can appear on GCSE papers both at the higher and foundation level, and I'm going to show you the different types of question that might appear. Some of the things I'm going to talk about on here will only be at higher, and I'll explain that as we go. As ever, for further information, you can always contact me, Mr_G_Walton, on Twitter, or you can follow us at Tupton Maths. Okay, in terms of what we're going to do in this video, we are going to basically look at rearranging equations or formula to make a different letter what's called the subject. Now, by the subject, it just means the letter at the front of the equal sign. So, for example, if we had something that looked like x equals 3y, then x is the subject because it's x equals. If we had something that looked like y equals 2 divided by x, then in this case y is the subject because it's the letter at the front. Okay, now as well as that, I'm going to expect you to be able to solve equations. Now, we're not actually going to be solving equations here, but the process we're going to go through is pretty much exactly the same as the process you'll go through if you are solving equations. Okay, so you're not going to actually be solving anything. We're not going to get any answers, if you like. We're never going to get x equals 7 or y equals 2. We are going to end up with something that just is a rearrangement of the question we were set out with in the beginning. Okay, let's do one. In this question, it says rearrange this formula to make n the subject. So before we do anything else, I'm just going to write out the question. So c equals 10n minus 5. Now, if we wanted n to be the subject, it's almost a bit like trying to solve for n. And if we were solving this, we would do the following things. We can see we've got a minus 5 here. We would add 5 to both sides of the equation. Okay, and so even though c here isn't actually a number that I can add 5 to, I still have the algebra skills, or I'm hoping you've got the algebra skills, to just think, okay, I can do this. This is just c, add 5. I'm just adding 5 onto both sides. And I've now got, on this side, just 10n, because we had minus 5 before, we've added 5 to it, so now we've got no values here at all, no numbers here. We've just got the 10n we started with. Okay, perfect. Now, again, if we were solving an equation, the next thing we would do is we would divide both sides by 10. And again, that's exactly what we're going to do here. Now, c plus 5 is what we started with, so we've still got c plus 5, and we're dividing all of that by 10. And this equals, on this side, n. Now, I've actually, at this point, finished. I've got n by itself. But just for neatness, I might now rearrange it again, just to put n at the other side. So, if c plus 5 over 10 is n, then n is also c plus 5 over 10. Okay, all I've done is I've just said instead of n being at this end of my formula or equation, I've swapped it over to the other side and moved this over here. Okay, it's exactly the same, and again, you won't lose any marks for leaving it in this form here. I just think it's neater to leave it n equals rather than the thing equaling n. Okay, let's see if we can do another one like this. At this point, the first question on here says make t the subject of this formula for both part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is very similar to what we've just done, so if you feel confident at this point having a go at part I here, then please do so. Pause the video now, have a go at it. If you want to watch me do it, then carry on watching. So I'm going to write it out, v equals u plus 10t. And again, I'm going to follow the same steps that I took before. So I'm going to take a u away from both sides first. So I've now got v minus u equals 10t. And finally, I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And again, over time, you'll not need to put down the little notations that you're doing on the side. I'm just showing you that now until you get comfortable rearranging things. I don't particularly like the idea that what we're doing is moving something from one side to the other, although as you get more confident with your maths, you end up just doing these things without really thinking about what it is that you're doing. But whilst you're practicing and whilst you're still in revision mode, I would definitely consider using these notation here, making sure you're doing the same thing to both sides each time. Okay, so I've got an answer for the first one, and you might have written it as well as t equals v minus u over 10. Brilliant. Okay, let's have a go at the next one as well then. So here we've got s equals 4t squared. Now, before we do anything else, we just need to think about what this 4t squared means. This means 4 multiplied by t squared. It's not 4t all squared, otherwise this would have been in brackets. Okay, so this is something that, again, you will have heard your teachers explaining this before. Just bear it in mind, it's really important, especially at this point when we are rearranging. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So divide by 4, and again divide by 4 on this side. Okay, easiest way to do that is not to use the divide by symbol, but to do s over 4. So set it out like a fraction. That way we're not going to make any mistakes when we're doing the next step. So here we've got that, and if I divide the right hand side by 4, I've just got t squared. Now, every other time I've done this, I've undone something. So last time it was 4 multiplied by. Here I've undone the multiply by dividing by. It's called the inverse operator. We're going to do exactly the same here. We're going to find the inverse of t squared. Now the inverse of squaring is square rooting. So here we're going to square root everything. So now I've got square root of s over 4 equals t. And to be really precise, what we should really do is put plus and minus here. The reason for that is that I could have taken a negative value for t and squared it. That's going to give me a positive thing. As well as, if I had a positive value and squared it, I would also get a positive answer. So just for completeness, I would write this as t equals positive and negative. So we can write this symbol in one go, plus and minus s over 4. And the square root sign here, again, I'm being really careful where to put it. It's not just the square root of s, all divided by 4. It's almost like this square root sign forms some pretend brackets around all this. Okay, we don't need to write them in, but in effect, that's what it's doing, because it's such a big square root sign, starts at the bottom and goes all the way round. Okay, again, when we're doing these things, you have to be really careful which bit you're square rooting. In this case, we were square rooting everything. Okay, good. Now, this one, you'll notice is a slightly different again, and this would only ever appear on a higher paper. So if you're a foundation candidate, you don't need to worry about this. You can skip on and have a go at the next slide, which is all about having a go at one yourself. If you're higher, you need to keep watching. Okay, let's have a look. So again, I'm going to write it out. G equals 3t plus 1 all over t. Now, t is appearing twice. This is going to cause us a little bit of a difficulty, but not too much. I'll show you what we need to do. Because we've got t at the bottom here, I'm going to have to multiply both sides by t just to get rid of this fraction kind of thing that's going on. So let's do that. Let's multiply both sides by t. And again, I'm using the notation with the little arrows. If you're comfortable doing it without, then please do so. So I've got gt on this side, and I've times everything on the right hand side by t, which means I've now just got 3t plus 1. In effect, what's happened is this over t here, if I had a t at the top, I'll just write it in and I'll delete it in a second. If I had a t at the top, it kind of cancels those things out. Okay, so I've now got gt equals 3t plus 1. Right, okay. Now, I still can't really quickly see how I'm going to get t's to be equal to something, so I've still got two kind of places where t is. I've got a t in this bit and a t in this bit. Okay, I'll show you what we're going to do. We need to take 3t from both sides. So minus 3t. The reason we're doing this is we're trying to get all the t's onto the left hand side. So I've got gt minus 3t equals 1. And again, you might be looking at this thinking, well, I don't know what you're doing, Walter. You've not helped at all here. You've just still got two terms with t in. But exactly, we've got two terms with a common factor of t. So what we can do is we can take a factor of t out. We've now got t lots of g minus 3 equals 1. And lo and behold, what we can do now is divide both sides by g minus 3. So divide g minus 3 and we get t equals 1 over g minus 3. This step here, so going from here to here, this factorization step is something that you're always going to end up doing when you've got t appearing twice like you do in the question here. Okay, so whenever you've got something like this, you're always going to rearrange it into a form where you've got all your letters that you're trying to get together on one side, take a factor out, and then divide by what you've got left. Okay, so it's a common trick. It works perfectly every time. Give it a go. Okay, so here's a question that you can have a go for yourself. It looks slightly different to the questions we've seen before, but hopefully it's not too challenging. There's just a little bit more algebra to have a go. So pause the video, have a go, and I'll show you what to do in a second. Okay, so again, I'm going to write out the question. Y equals 2 lots of 2x plus 3. You'll notice we've got brackets here. I'm hoping what you've done is expanded the brackets. So y equals 4x plus 6. If you're not sure about expanding brackets, go back, have a look at your revision notes, how to do that. It's a useful algebraic skill to have. Then I'm going to take 6 away from both sides. So y minus 6 equals 4x. And finally, I'm going to divide by 4. So y minus 6 over 4 equals x. And again, if I want to write it out neatly, x equals y minus 6 over 4. Now here, I haven't done the arrows in terms of explaining what I've done. Maybe if you have, you could fill those in yourself. And if you haven't, then fine, it's not a problem. Very quickly, I'm just thinking what I've done. I've taken 6 away from both sides here, and then I've divided by 4. And again, whatever we're doing to the one side of the equation, we're doing exactly the same to the other. We're keeping it neat and tidy, and we've got ourselves a solution. Okay, here's another one for you to have a. This one's a little bit harder. Again, this is only for higher candidates. So again, pause the video, read the question, have a go, and see where we get to. Okay, so again, I'm going to write this out. You'll see straight away that I've got more than one term with b's in, and that should be means that we're going to end up doing some factorising somewhere, but let's have a go. So we've got a equals 2wb plus 2wh plus 2bh, and this is formula for if we're working out the surface area for this cuboid here. Okay, we need to make b the subject. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my 2wh, so I'm going to take that from both sides. The reason I'm going to do that is that this term's got a b in and this term's got a b in. That means that I should be able to do something with it in terms of getting this and this, keeping it on the same side. I'm going to have to take a factor out in a bit. Okay, so first of all, I said I was taking 2wh from both sides. So a minus 2wh equals 2wb plus 2bh. Okay, now we're trying to make b the subject. So on this left hand side, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to leave it alone and write it out again. On the right hand side, I'm going to take a factor of b out. So 2w plus 2h. And now finally I'm going to divide both sides by this here, leaving b by itself. So I will get a minus 2wh all divided by 2w plus 2h, and that equals b here. And again, for neatness, I'm just going to rewrite it. B equals a minus 2wb over 2w plus 2h. If you got that, well done. The questions that you're going to face are going to be very similar to the questions that I've shown you in this video. Have a look back through your exam past paper questions and see if you can find something like this. Have a go and see how you get on. As ever, at the end of a video, I will give you some revision card notes if you're making notes. For this, I've called it rearranging algebraic formulas or equations, or the preferred way of thinking about it is it's called changing the subject. So you have to change the subject. It just means rearranging, like we've just been doing. Key things to think about: do the same as if you were being asked to solve an equation. So that idea of doing the same thing to both sides. Okay, this little tip is really useful, I think. Don't worry if your answer's not a number, it won't be. It's just going to be another solution that you get, another equation. It doesn't look like anything that it doesn't look like you've solved anything, and you haven't solved. You've just moved it around and written it in a different way. Okay. Now, if you've got time, and only if you've got time, and you want to check, what you could do is try substituting a value into your first equation. You're going to get a number coming out, and then if you then take that answer and substitute it back into your new equation, you should get your original value back out. Now this again is a higher skill, a higher topic, so only do this if you're confident in doing it, you understand what you're doing. I'm sure if you follow the process you'll get the right answer, but in terms of checking, this might be a nice thing to do. Okay, as ever, good luck with your exams. I'll keep my fingers crossed that you carry on working hard, that you do the best that you can, and that the exam gods think favourably of you on the day. As ever, any questions you can of course ask on Twitter. You can use the hashtag AskWalto, or follow me either on my YouTube video channel or on Twitter.